All right, hello everyone. This is Shelena Tate MBA. I'm here with a special episode with my dynamic guest, Miss Ruth Horry. How are you doing today?
Good, good. Excited to be here.
Yes. Okay. Well, we are on here for a special reason. We are about to be dynamic at the Daniel Kids Conference. It's an independent living conference that's going to be in Orlando, Florida, the week of August 27th through the 30th. And before I hop into that, Miss Ruth, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I'm really excited to be here and just share and highlight this opportunity and hopefully encourage others for next year.
Yes. Okay, so today we're going to be getting into what the Daniel Conference is, how we relate as speakers, and any questions you may have. Especially if you have on the replay, if you have any questions, just feel free to reach out to us. This is week one, so featuring Ruth Horry. Um, the Daniel Kids Conference. I'm ecstatic with her. Daniel Kids has been around. They're celebrating their 43rd anniversary. They've been around for 140 plus years. Phenomenal social service community that's in Orlando, Florida, and they're hosting a number of conferences. They had one for really the leaders and the adults, but now they're doing their independent living conference, which is what we'll be a part of. Independent living as it relates to foster care community. Miss Ruth, did you have anything to add to that? Could you kind of like give them a Cliff Notes definition of what it means to be independent living and then foster care and how we
Yeah,
relate?
yes. Welcome everyone. Hi, my name is Ruth Horry. I am the owner of the Coco Pauline Company. I am an author and I'm also a former foster care youth. And so the independent living process is the right before a youth is aging out of care to the point of them aging out of care, and then the years that follow that process. For kids who are in care, it's a very unique process, being that they lack a lot of the structural family support that kids who aren't in care often have.
Yes, yes. Thank you for that. That's so true. Something that if it was a normal circumstance would kind of be taken for granted. The youth, foster youth and youth that's in those situations. Independent living is so valuable because that's the transition we'll have before adulthood, and unfortunately, a lot of the youth, especially the ones we'll be talking to, are kind of forced into that situation, and many may not be ready because of age and circumstance. But could you share, really, yeah, as we go further into the conference, how this conference, independent living, and how that's going to really prepare them as they transition out?
So I guess before I jump into the what that piece of it, how we all came together to even like get this opportunity to speak, um, co-authors in a book that we were able to share our feelings as it relates to growing up in care. And so my personal experience is what really drew me to want to have this conversation, because I was in and out of care from about 5 years old. And then I aged out at about almost 22. So you can be in care until 21 up until your 22nd birthday. And then they have to find another a place for you. So I accredit the structure that I have in life. I'm so sorry. I
Okay.
accredit that structure to the support and the foundation that I was given while in care. It was really important for me as I'm now entering back into the system in a working capacity. I actually had the opportunity to work in the very same group home that I came out of, um, and seeing a devastating difference. It's one thing to say lack of support, support is non existent. And there are a number of reasons for that. This is not a blame game. Um, we're at the table to create change, not to point fingers. And so when I say that a lot of the structure wasn't there, kids are going from being abused as youth in care to leaving care with no support, and then ending up in the shelter and
Mhm.
ending up in situations where they're not able to support themselves because
Mhm.
all of the aftercare services that I was getting, they're not. And I don't
Mhm.
know why that's not happening. And my goal and all of our goal is to change that.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Ruth, for expounding on that and how true that is. Once we leave the system, and of course, many youth leave for different reasons, different ages. Unfortunately, trauma is a number one factor that a lot of youth may leave the system earlier on, especially near 18, 19. And then, regardless of the age, she's 1,000% right. Once you leave the system, you're on your own because it's like the state has closed your book, really your case file, and you're now considered an adult. And unfortunately, even though by age and biological you're an adult, it may not mean you're necessarily ready for adult responsibilities, whether that's living on your own, holding out a job, having a car, paying bills. Those are like real transitional things. I know for myself, um, I'm just now like still going, from really coming from strides of okay, survival, which a lot of those youth face as well when you're out from the system. It's like a game of survival, unless they have the support system that Ruth is talking about. There was mentors, there was resources, but the reality is, okay, that's great to have, but when you're in the real world and you're in the real situation, what do you do? Where do you go? Who can help? And Ruth, I know your services and what you do has been doing a phenomenal job meeting the youth right where they are. Could you could you tell us more about that and how you want to bring that aspect to the Daniel kids?
Yeah. So I go deeper. It's more than the basics of paying bills and
Yeah,
making budgets. It's making a house a home.
yeah,
How
that's it.
can you ask a child who's never had a home to make one? And when I say a house, a home, I lived the majority of my adult life with a to go bag. I always had that bag. I was a runaway.
Mhm.
And so I
Yes.
always had that bag of things that were the most important to me. And in the event that I had to get out now, I would have those things. And so I've lived in many apartments, nice places, but I never quite put everything up and out because to me, that meant I just never felt secure because for a lot of foster youth, and especially teenagers, unfortunately for Black and Brown youth in care in the United States, once you hit about 12, 13, our kids are not seen as kids. They're seen as grown adults. And so the care and the nurturing aspect of being in care is gone. And so we're not filling or doing anything to fill the holes that these children are coming in with. And we're just sending them out into society with no support system. Hoarding is a really big issue for youth that come out of care because if
Yeah.
you can imagine going from one place to another and always having your things ripped and taken from you, um, if you manage to hold on to anything that was positive from your past, it's hard to let go of that. And not even being able to have those conversations, um, I think we're just doing a disservice to our youth. And I see this as the gap, and this is where I want to stand.
Yeah. Thank you again because you're right. Especially when you're in situations, especially being in households where you kind of feel like you're in competition, even though you're not trying to be in competition. You may be in a home, or youth may be in a home where there's like multiple siblings, and it's a clear difference. And you, not that we're trying to stand out, or they are trying to stand out as foster youth, but you do. And unfortunately, you may be in a situation, a shelter, a group home, a foster home, where you're kind of pitted against the biological children that's already there, their space, what they want, what the family views as, okay, you're just a foster. I kind of, before getting on this live, I kind of did like a quick little excitable spill on TikTok, really excitable, and explaining a lot of what Ruth is talking about, how, we came together as anthology authors, and we're growing as a movement, the Faces of Foster Care, as led by Dr. Kate Kaiser, the visionary. And a lot of our stories do go deep into those situations of what we've dealt with in the foster care system, and really the stuff we've faced. And like Ruth said, we are hoping to, as a growing, unified collective, help change the narrative for the better by sharing a lot of what we've been through. A lot of those youth, they're going through the same cycle of, not really feeling like they belong, not really feeling like they have adequate support, not really knowing what to do, especially when it's time to age out. And so, if we can share anything we've learned, we're hoping to do that as well. I know, Ruth, you have so many dynamic resources, and many of what you're working on now. You have a journal, just different stuff you want to engage the youth with. Would you like to speak about a little bit of that? What you want to
Yeah,
bring?
I would love to share some of my work, but before I did, I just want to touch on one thing that you had just mentioned, that there needs to be a clear distinction. There's one thing for I have had both. I was in foster care, like someone's
Okay.
home, and then
Yeah.
I was also, since a teenager, like I said, there's no homes for teenagers. People don't. They want babies. They want to
Yeah,
raise
well, baby.
someone, and
Yeah.
so I was unfortunately, I experienced both, and so I did the group home route, and but I was also in foster care, and what I can say, I think it's worse, because in the group home there were other people, there were other outlets, and abuse is less likely. Not to say that it doesn't happen, because it does a
Yeah.
lot, but
Yeah.
I could just imagine. And I can remember when I was younger, my mom, she abandoned all three of us. She dropped us off at a relative's house, and said that she was going to my older sister's school, and she moved to Florida. And one thing led to the next, where the family couldn't take us because it was three of us. And I remember the foster care, and I was 6. I'll never, ever, ever in my life forget this. It was in Brooklyn, in New York, and the lady she had her own kids, and they had their own rooms, and their rooms were nice. I can
Hmm.
remember there was a old school candy machine, the one where you put the quarter in, and in
Yeah.
the house. We weren't allowed to
Wow.
touch that. But there
Wow.
were a whole bunch of kids. So there was about 6 or 7 of us in one room. There was 2 bunk beds. One of the children, I believe, was autistic, but I was 6, so I didn't know what that was at the time. But he would take off all his clothes, and he would do like repetitive rocking movements, and he would just yell all day long. I was trying, like, I'm 6. Like, I came from a home. My mom just abandoned us, and now we're in this situation. I remember there being no light in there. Um, I remember just being treated so different. Like, it was like we were the animals, and we had to get locked in that room while they're collecting this money and this, paycheck. And it's there was no one to call. There was no one to tell. And so my heart goes out to those who have experienced foster homes, the horror of foster homes. Because not everybody is in this for the right reasons. A lot of people are in this to for money. Um, yeah, I could go on and on with those stories, because I was in foster homes with my child, because I had my child under 18. So we could probably go back and forth forever. But in reference to what I'm doing now with youth, I work with young people age 14 to 24 who have experienced abuse, or have been incarcerated, or juvenile justice impacted. And I help give them the tools that are needed to thrive in these situations. And what that means is I have like a 10-step. These are the things that have kept my head above water. These are my tried and true. Therapy is important, but if it's not with a cultural appropriate therapist, if it's not a therapist that looks like you and knows the experience, it's not any good to me, in my honest opinion. schooling, reaching out for these opportunities while they're in care, because there are so many resources available that youth don't know. And that's one of the things we're going to be doing at the Daniel Conference. I plan to focus on finding those resources in the room, and being able to share those out with young people. Google search will do amazing things. And so it's not that we have to find the needle in the haystack. We have to gather the resources that are available within each state for our young people and make sure that we get that into their hands, get that into the hands of the social workers that are working with them. And I do mentoring, public speaking, and I also have my workbook and journal.
Yes, thank you again for just being so transparent about the realities of what it is. And um, unfortunately, it is that for a lot of youth, especially now, there's a new wave. Like I said earlier, this is unfortunately a cycle of foster care, adoption, being orphaned, and especially marginalized. And how important it is to really have those resources and leaders and services that can mainly relate, because a youth, you can send a youth to a therapist all day, like Ruth said, but if the youth is not comfortable because they don't feel the therapist looks like them or really relates to what they're going through, they could shut down. And we need more awareness and how we can better support each state to help find the resources that can help better support the youth. And I, could you give us really some testimonials? I know you have a lot. I know you have youth that constantly reach back out to you, just really thanking you for just the time you take with them, with what you do. What effects have you seen in relation to the youth you serve?
Honestly, I can't say that
Yeah,
I believe that my yes to Jesus, my yes to my surrender,
yeah,
um, is why it accredits to the change that I'm able to, because I had to change. I had to heal in order to help them. You know, a lot of us get into this because we were not saved. We weren't helped, right? And so we
yeah,
get into this and we want to help. But if I don't do the work to heal,
yeah,
I'm doing nothing but bleeding all over that. And
yeah,
so once I was able to do that, the results are the hope that I see.
yeah,
I meet children and they're at their lowest, and then to work with them. And this is not, I meet with them and I give them these resources and they skip along. No, this is
mhm,
years of relationship. I
yeah,
have one young lady that she's mine. Like, and I met her when she was experiencing the worst, and I'm just seeing the fight from this young lady. And she just graduated high school. She's on her way to college. She beat all the odds. She's valedictorian, and she was living a life of hell. So what I get to see is them pushed past, right?
yeah,
And I get to be their cheerleader. There are so many lows to get to the highs.
mm,
And then it just takes, patience and compassion and grace, because they come to you so battered and so bruising and
mhm,
so broken and hurt. And, I have to also let them know I'm here to stay, and that um, there's nothing that they have done or could do that makes them non-deserving of a second chance and love. And so sometimes that takes 6 months before they're like, okay, I trust her and I'll be there. So every kid, it looks different. And so this blanket across the board approach is not going to help. Every child responds differently. And we say that with learning. There's different learning styles. So
yeah,
it makes sense that kids learn different and respond differently and heal differently. And
yeah,
so just having your ear to the ground, listen, because what I experienced 20 years ago in the system is not what they're experiencing today.
no,
Society isn't what it was. And
no,
so I took the first couple years just listening,
yeah,
and learning. and living it out in my life, you know. So when they see me and I share my story out the gate, and they're like, is she there? Yeah, you too, come on.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yes. I'm just reflecting as you're speaking, imagining those moments. Well, from what you were speaking about, and really the years ago, I was a K-5 substitute, and a lot of youth in their situations, meaning them to me back to my childhood of going through school and having to deal with bullying and just different stuff. And you just mentioned how the same approach doesn't work for everybody. That is so true. And unfortunately, when the youth, like I was speaking about, go through really just what they're going through, especially now. It's so different from when we became, but it's like there's still some of the same cycles. Like they could go through school and then they have to deal with bullying, and then a kid is not going to be their best if they're coming to school really not fitting in and dealing with trauma and having to survive at home, and it's like the same cycle of what support is there. Um, and I love how you, of course, credit really God directing you to divine purpose in how your healing is now being able to like help those behind you, which is what's needed so much now because yes, the one size fit all doesn't fit for everyone. It's just like I'm so passionate. I know everybody has different views and opinions, but I'm so passionate kind of against like just putting a kid in just remedial and giving them medication and labeling them behavioral because that's not always their thing. They may be coming from a lot of what we're talking about. And it's like what resources is there to specifically meet them right where they are and not just say, hey, go see the school psychiatrist and we're gonna shove you in this class. Okay, I went on a tangent. But much of what we're talking about, I did mention earlier again in my excitement about how we're coming together, unified group, the Face of the Foster Care movement. I'm gonna keep calling it a movement because that's what it is.
It
What an
is.
honor, yeah, what an honor, one, to be able to see you again and really this time meet you face to face.
Yes,
And
yes.
I'm so honored to be able to speak with you at Daniel Kids Independent Living. And I was saying earlier how monumental that is in itself because a lot of times, we know we've come out of these situations of foster care. Unfortunately, the story's not always good, right? You don't always hear those who are making better strides or success stories. And we're hoping that at this conference, meeting the youth that we'll meet and the leaders and just being revisited with a lot of the resources and the stuff that, man, is there. Now we're going to be able to add to the chapter towards their progression. Um, I, I can ramble on about that, but how do you feel? How do you? I know you're used to conferences and speaking and traveling. I'm geeking out because I'm excited because it's like all opening up for all of us, and I'm just so excited and thankful. How do you feel about getting to speak at the Daniel Kids and just what that means for what you already do?
Yes. So yes, I've had an amazing past couple of years, but if I'm honest with you, I have the same excitement for every single one.
Yes,
I feel blessed. I feel grateful for the opportunity, and I love to travel. So
yes.
the best part of any of it is the travel part. But yes, I'm excited because I'm proving myself wrong that day. I never thought that a person like me, who came from what I had come from and who had survived what I survived, would share a stage such as this. I never thought I would have anything to give back to anyone in that situation. I just wanted to get out, and so it's surreal. And I'm hoping to encourage the young people that I work with because I didn't know this opportunity existed, and now that I do, the people that need to be there are this generation, the ones that are experiencing it now, the change makers, the ones who have the solution but don't have the power.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I'm excited to meet all of the authors in person. I definitely want to shout out the our book that we came together and were able to share a chapter each
Yes.
um, of our stories. And yeah, I'm just excited to meet everybody in person.
Yes. If you're just now tuning in, feel free to leave questions, comments. What we're doing, we're covering really just what led up to us, of course, getting together as the faces of foster care, and now having this amazing opportunity with Ruth Horry to speak at the Daniel Kids Conference, a phenomenal conference coming up in Orlando, Florida, August the 27th through the 30th. It's an independent living conference, and we're kind of expounding on what does it mean for independent living and foster care. We've kind of touched on how the reality of what a lot of youth face on a regular, especially about what we've gone through and how it's so different now. And we're having to really kind of like learn what and how to best be a support to the youth that's going through it now. And because unfortunately this is a cycle, it's like we're still going to have to learn as the newer generation goes through it. And you never want it to be like knowing more is going to go through it, but I believe that God has allowed us to go through it because we're wanting to now be some kind of change we want to see, right? We want to help progress the generations afterwards. And then they're going to in turn do the same thing. I'm so thankful to have written with Ruth. I can't wait for her to start writing some more stuff. I know she's about working on some stuff now. I don't know. Do you have anything in the works with Ruth?
Uh, yes, this did encourage me to, because honestly, I think that if you want to learn more about my early years, the Face of Foster Care, I'm in volume 2.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you.
Definitely pick that up on Amazon. Pick up a Face of Foster Care volume 1, 2, and 3,
That's
honestly,
right.
because the proceeds from this book go to Kay's carry-ons. And one thing we didn't touch on is how these kids are shifted from place to place. And in the majority of the time, their belongings are in a garbage bag. And so
Oh
Kay's
yeah.
carry-ons, the proceeds from that, Dr. Kay Kaiser uses to ensure that these young people have adequate luggage to travel from place to place.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, yes, definitely got a chance to tell a piece of my story, which I had never done before. You know, I always graze over it and trauma bond with people who've been through it, but I've never said the quiet part out loud to the world. And so, last year, in the Face of Foster Care, I believe I'm chapter 12, I told my story, some
Yes.
of it. And so now I am actually working on my book because it's out there. So I got a lot of explaining to do. This is only 3 pages, so I know I got a lot of explaining to do.
Congratulations, Ruth. You know what? I yes, please, listeners, feel free, yes, to support all the volumes and just especially if you pick up volume 2, go show some love to Ruth, and her testimony. And once again, by no means, we all wrote for the volumes, but by no means can we say that all the stories are just oh, it's just so easy. it took
Yeah,
it took a while to get for all of us here to the point of writing about it and just being able to really share our experiences and really the reality of healing and the stuff we've gone through because now newer generations are coming along and they need to also know that writing your story is possible, healing is possible, having a support system now is possible outside of I'm reflecting on it as I'm saying it. I feel like this growing movement with the Faces of Foster Care, and I know there's so many other support systems, especially local to your state. But if you catch us in your state, know that we're going to love on you. I'm Hey, I feel we're gonna be traveling around. I'm just saying, like Ruth, I done picked up the travel bug, and I want to travel everywhere.
yeah,
So if you say like, bring us to your state, we have a convention, we have a conference, and I'm gonna just kind of touch on this. I'm gonna hint to add to it if Ruth wanna. It's in development, so I'm not gonna give too much details, but I'm gonna go ahead and say because I'm like a little kid right now. We are planning for next year a youth expo in New York, and Ruth is the master creator behind that. So if you want to know more about that potentially as we progress, feel free to reach out, connect with Ruth Horry. What's the best way they can reach out with you, especially if they're wanting to be involved?
So the best way to reach out, or the quickest way to reach me, would be on social media. So I am Coco Pauline. I am on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram. Um, TikTok.
YouTube. Yes, yes.
Or
Please
you
reach
can
out.
leave a message because this video will upload to YouTube. So you can just shoot a message in the comments and I'll be sure to
Yes.
follow up with you.
Leave a question in the comment. Leave some comments, and feel free to share this content because we know that everybody couldn't probably make it this time, but this content we want to make sure we get it to whoever could watch it and benefit from it, and be able to pour into somebody they know, right? Um, I know we haven't gotten there yet because we're going to be doing, just to give y'all a heads up, we're going to be doing some footage from the conference. I'm excited. We're going to be doing some lives. We're going to probably be doing some interviews, and you're going to see some excitement. We're probably not going to capture the faces of the youth, of course, because of HIPAA, but we will be there on location. And I'm super excited and thankful to join Ruth on this journey. Um, if you want to consider fostering and or adopting, you have more questions, you want to know how you could be more involved, um, there's local agencies like Ruth was mentioning earlier. There's local agencies, there's organizations. You may work for a company that has a program or pours into a program if you want to give back that way, and then further connect with Ruth and then what she's doing, and see how can you support that, her journals, really her resources that's going to really teach these youth how they can progress forward. Before we go, Ruth, what is a takeaway? What is the takeaways you're wanting potentially for the impact you want this conference to make for the youth?
I plan to create change right there in the room. We're going to do an interactive workshop, and I would like everyone who is in the field, even the young people, we're going to look up for these resources. I'm going to share some that are available nationally and get that started so that we can, one person at a time. All of the people that are coming to that conference are connected to foster care youth in some way, and they can all bring back and share that information so that young people are getting the supports that they need um, when they don't exist in the program or in the home that they're living in.
Yes. And by the way, if there's anybody watching who may actually find yourself in Florida at that time or relating to the social service or maybe at that conference, feel free to look us up. We're going to be Tuesday the 27th. We're going to have a meet and greet, social networking room. But you could feel free to leave a comment if you're interested in that. But we are going to be speaking that Thursday the 29th. We have a day session and an evening session, but primarily empowering the youth. We have another fellow alum who's going to be on here shortly, next couple of weeks, talking about what he's going to be doing at the conference. So this is week one. I'm celebrating with Ruth Horry, and we're kicking this off next week. We don't know who's going to be on here, but we're all going to be on here to like pour into the Daniel Kids Conference, what we're hoping to do, and the impacts we're hoping for it to make. And our final live, we're hoping to get all of us on here so that we can like have a live Q&A, answer some questions, and just really continue celebrating the strides we're trying to make. All right. Well, Miss Ruth, it's always an honor to talk to you. And looking forward to, just further sharing this content as we progress. And
Yes.
yes, yes, and please, please, feel free to reach out to her here on this live on the YouTube in the comment section about her resources. Once again, you may not relate to. I'm very excitable. The person you see now, I'm very excitable. I like to skip through the field of daisies, but I also understand that life doesn't always is not that way. So sometimes you may need to have those deep conversations, like those real, like in your face conversations. Miss Ruth, I think, is a phenomenal leader that can meet you right where you are there. I can too, but I just will be wanting to give you a hug and just be like, it's gonna be okay. But all of it's necessary just to let you know that hey, we see you and you're not forgotten.
Yeah. Well, thank
All
you so
right.
much for having me. It was a pleasure, and I look forward to tuning in next week.
Yes, yes. All right. Well, everyone have a dynamic rest of your day. Share this content. Miss Ruth, thank you for being on the live with me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Everybody have a nice day. Is that